We're going to be going over IRS Notice CP12E, which is a notice that the IRS might issue if there's a miscalculation on your tax return. So we'll go through this form, even though it's heavily redacted. We'll kind of talk about some of the things that you might see if you receive this notice. And then we'll talk about some of the items that are behind the redactions. So let's start with the upper right-hand corner. You'll see the notice number, or the type of notice it is, CP12E, the tax year. In this case, it goes back to 2009. The notice date is probably the most important item here, because if there is any action that the IRS expects you to take, they usually tie it to the notice date. So it's important to know that if you receive an IRS notice where the Internal Revenue Service is expecting you to do something, pay a tax bill, respond if you disagree with an assessment, request an appeal. Like, there are certain time frames that you're allowed to do that. And then after that, you might have less ability to do whatever that intended thing is. So, for example, if you receive a notice and it says pay this tax bill, they usually say within 21 days, and they'll make a note somewhere in the notice that the due date of that tax payment is exactly 21 days after the notice date up here. And then after that, the IRS may have to recalculate penalties and interest. So that would be an example. Other examples might be you'll lose certain appeal rights if you don't respond with an appeal within a certain time frame, things of that nature. So always take notice of the notice date. Now, up here in the upper left-hand corner, I'm not sure why they redacted the name or the location of the IRS office. And then with the taxpayer information, this is usually a name and then a fake address that the IRS has made up. I'm not sure why they redacted simulated information. But what I would recommend is, if this is your taxpayer name and address, check your address, make sure that it's up to date. If you've recently moved, then you may consider filing IRS Form 8822, or for business owners, IRS Form 8822-B. Those are the change of address notices for the IRS. You can also call the IRS. I know lots of people don't like sitting on hold and going through the phone tree, but that is an option. And then finally, every year when you do file a tax return, if you file with new address information, the IRS is prompted to update your record on file with your new address. So keep that up to date, because if your notice gets lost in the mail or takes longer to route to your new address, the IRS does not take that into consideration when it comes to things like your appeal rights and recalculating your penalties and interest. So just keep that in mind. All right, let's take a look at what this notice is telling us. So looks like changes to the 2009 Form 1040 created a refund. So looks like the miscalculation was in the form of employee business expenses, and it says a miscalculation. So I don't think it shows actually any of the information. It just says you miscalculated based on what you paid previously. We lowered the amount of tax that you were supposed to receive, which means that you're now due a refund because you overpaid that tax. And it looks like this would be employee business expenses, which is reported on IRS Form 2106. We'll put links in the show notes to resources on IRS Form 2106, as well as the change of address forms. So if you agree with the changes, you don't really need to do anything. You can just wait 4 to 6 weeks until the IRS gives you your refund. You can update your contact information with the IRS using this information slip at the bottom of page 1. If you don't agree with the changes, then you can call this redacted 800 number to review your account. generally most taxpayers wouldn't disagree with a refund, but again, within 60 days of notice, if you contact the IRS in writing, then they can make changes. If for some reason uh, you do not contact them within the 60-day period, then you can lose certain rights. That's what all of this is saying. And then it talks about claims for refunds. You may, submit basically a claim for a refund if you pay an additional tax. But this is kind of boilerplate information that doesn't really make sense because they're referencing an additional tax when the change results in a refund. So, you can use your own discretion to determine whether or not that was really intended or if this was just kind of boilerplate template information that appears in a notice. So, take a little bit of time to read through that. You can. It is easy to be confused by the fact that you're getting a refund and then you read this verbiage about additional tax. I mean, I've received lots of correspondence from people where this is confusing. So I'm taking a little bit of extra time to just kind of say, hey, the information up here is based on your unique situation. Whereas some of this information, I've seen enough of these notices to basically to understand that this is very boilerplate information that they'll put on a lot of notices, even if it doesn't directly apply, and especially if it doesn't make sense. So the bottom line is, if you don't say anything to the IRS, they're just going to assume that you agree with the information in the notice. And that is true 100% of the time. On the last page, basically, this says that we didn't allow the credit claimed as other credits because your supporting documentation was incomplete. So, there's a series of calculations here that don't really make sense here. I guess this should have been 158, which may have resulted in a higher tax, but then your tax credit. Yeah, so these numbers kind of line up with what's here, but then it doesn't really make sense that you're due a refund over almost a year after you filed your tax return and should have gotten a refund properly. So I would say that this particular example is not going to look like anyone's form or notice 12E. So it should be pretty straightforward. It looks like the IRS tried to create an example here that just doesn't make sense, but generally speaking, it should show your calculations, the IRS calculations for your same tax return. And again, they disallowed the employee business expenses, which were reported through to IRS Form 3800 because of some sort of documentation, that wasn't attached to your return. So, in this case, the IRS kind of, made it a little bit more confusing. I think in a realistic example, you could have taken this information and then just assumed that the person had previously received a refund after filing their tax return. So the IRS is now disallowing this credit, which means that it's a tax due. And I think that's the missing part of this example notice right here. So it should have been payments you made, should have been a refund that you received if you filed in, say the March to April time frame. I guess you could make a case that maybe this was filed on extension and pushed all the way out until October of 2010. It still kind of seems a little weird to me that there's nothing in here about the refund. And then on top of this, the refund, this form just kind of doesn't look right. But let's go to the website, the IRS page, where they actually have guidance on, these notices. So Basically, a CP12E notice is very similar to a CP12F notice, where the IRS finds a miscalculation on your tax return. They correct the miscalculation. Then the notice is used to articulate exactly what they disagreed with. You can receive a refund. In this case, they kind of forced a refund into that. And I think that's the intent of the CP12E notice, where you either overpaid, you overpaid your taxes, either you were expecting a refund and you're going to get a bigger refund, or you thought you owed money and now or had a zero balance and now the IRS is going to give you a refund. So you don't need to do anything, especially if you're expecting a refund. Most people would probably just appreciate the fact that they're getting money back and move about their day. But if you do disagree, you do have 60 days within the date of the notice to make any recommended changes, to give your feedback to the IRS, to request an audit, and then the IRS can explain audit options when you respond. There's some links to helpful information, specifically IRS Form 2210, which is the underpayment of estimated tax. That's if you pay taxes throughout the year, then you shouldn't receive a penalty. But if you pay zero taxes throughout your year and you wait until April 14th to pay a huge tax bill, you're probably going to get penalized a little bit along the way based on your situation. So we'll put links in the show notes to all the forms that have been referenced here. And I'm going to go back to the original notice just to see if there's anything we missed. I think we've covered everything. Again, this example is the only one that I was able to find on the internet, and I apologize for this being a little bit more confusing. But the general, expectation is if you get a CP12E or CP12F notice, you probably should be expecting a refund. And if you want to do anything, you have 60 days from the notice date up here to get your feedback to the IRS so that you can do whatever you think the appropriate thing is. So as I mentioned, we'll put resources or links to resources in the show notes. If you like our articles, please feel free to subscribe to our newsletter. If you like our YouTube videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have any questions or comments, or if there's anything else I can help you with, please hit me up in the comment section. Thank you very much and have a great day.